Hello, my name is Katie Gattoni, and I want to talk about Turnabout Ranch and all of the programs in Utah currently harboring hundreds of kids under horrible conditions. My mind has been screaming at me to make this video for a long time. Lately, the volume has turned up substantially, and no matter how many times I come with my little raggedy paper, I haven't been able to get it out. Even now, over 15 years later, I'm shaking. It's hard to think about. Recently, I was in the polar vortex storm in Austin, Texas, and we had to boil our water and bathe out of pots and stuff. And I have started to kind of tackle this so many times, and then I just don't. But as I was walking outside with my 5-gallon bucket, making a hole in the ice to get water out to flush the toilet, and boiling snow for water, I was in the tub and I'm doing this, bath out of a pot, and I just said, that's it. This is happening to some kid right now there. And I still have yet to do anything about it. So I'm going to give you a piece of my story. I was sent to Turnabout Ranch twice. I'm an overachiever. I was luckily there for record heat and then record rain, snow, and cold. My first day there, I was walked down the stairs to Camp Roundy, which is where you start. You are an animal. You have no privileges. You cannot even make eye contact in the first stage. Anyway, so I walk down these stairs and I'm already like, what is happening? Here I am in the middle of nowhere in Utah. All escape routes are non-existent. Way up this canyon, and I'm walked down these stairs and I get taken into this room by a staff member, a single male, and I had never been, arrested or in trouble before or anything. So he told me, he goes, open your mouth. And they had thrown some clothes and told me, I needed to put these clothes on, but first I needed to open my mouth. Well, I didn't know, right, they were checking my mouth for something. And I'm in shock, of course, and I just said, what? Because I didn't hear, it didn't make sense to me. I thought he said open your mouth and stick your tongue out, but I was like, what is going on in this room? And instead of answering me, he swipes my legs out from under me, pins me on the ground, one arm over my neck, and I'm laying there, and he grabs my other arm and pulls it in front of me so I can see, takes the knife out of his pocket, shaves the skin off of my arm. He goes, it's always this sharp. Now open your fucking mouth. So it was about then I realized I was fucked. I can't begin to tell you the fear, the paranoia, the worthlessness, the abuse that was instilled and put upon us at that place. It's honestly, it's unfathomable that it's happening here in the United States and still continues to happen. You start off in a circle about 6 feet wide and rocks. You are not allowed to make eye contact. You are not allowed to speak. You have no shoes. You eat after everyone, and your food is bland and non-existent, or like, for instance, I was served dried oatmeal, and then for lunch it was dried Cheerios, and then at dinner it was usually plain noodles. You have to eat all the meals and everything in your little circle. Nobody is allowed to look at you or talk to you. If you ask for the bathroom in a non-convenient time, they won't let you go. You are told to journal, but they read your journal. And so you're not allowed to write anything real because they read it and they rip pages out if they don't like what you're writing. So this is when the brainwashing starts, right? You sleep on a hard wood pallet, just a piece of wood. So it's raised up off the ground by about 2 inches. You are left outside if possible, unless there was fresh tracks spotted by a mountain lion or something, in which case you get to come inside and sleep on the floor of the cabin with no electricity, no nothing. After you make it through this phase, this impact phase, you are allowed to eat somewhat better food, no condiments. You may not talk to anyone else unless specifically told to, still. And then your day starts and ends with brutal chores and tasks. I just remember laying in my now raised bed, which also was just a plywood slab, okay? You're so sore from doing all these chores all day long. Meaningless tasks. Not only do you take care of the animals, but they might say, oh, there's a pallet of wood right there, or a cord of wood. Pick that up, move it over 20 feet. You finish it, okay, move it back. You're taking care of animals. You have to go get your water from the creek. Baths, not existent, okay? So you're supposed to, the rule was you get a bath every 4 days. Typically it would end up being about every 7. You'd have to walk down this trail with 2 5-gallon buckets. That's all you got. If you dropped and spilled some, too bad. You had to go to the creek, fill up your buckets, walk back into the cabin. You were allowed to warm it in the winter. If you messed up, you only got a certain amount of time. So if you made it too hot, too bad. You had to stand in the scalding water and put it in an old wash bin, like from the old days. That's just like a couple of feet diameter. Someone was always watching you. You were not allowed to sit down. You had to stand and bathe yourself with their disgusting dirty water in front of the staff watching you. There was goals. You had to write these goals, okay? And they start, and I'm not kidding, they're 15 to 35 pages. And the prompt would be, I am manipulative in this way. Not, is there a way I am, but I am manipulative in this way. So what do you end up doing? That's a lot to write, right? So you just end up repeating yourself. You're brainwashing yourself, telling yourself you're this horrible person. And we know that if you want to rewrite a habit in yourself and in your body, writing it out makes it real. This was done on purpose. So you're writing down all these reasons about how you're a horrible person and how your family doesn't deserve you and how just, I mean, that's a whole other thing. There was a lot of abuse. The threat of having your shoes taken and going back to the circle where you're just a piece of dirt was always there. One time we had to build this platform for a water jug, and after we finished it, the staff member goes, oh, you know, it's kind of like a little stage. Why don't you get up and do a jig for me? And I was like, fuck you, you know, like, what do you, like, and so, you know, and it was like, it brought back like all this embarrassment and this weird thing, and I was just like, I was too slow in dancing this jig, right, after digging all these post holes, and it was just to laugh at us, and give me your shoes. That was it. I was inhuman for a couple days for that. I remember my friend and I, you're not really allowed to talk to people. We would whisper, depending on certain staff members, if we got to sleep upstairs in the cabin, which again, you're sleeping on plywood beds, quote unquote beds. You have no pillow. You're not allowed to make a pillow out of your blanket. However, in the summer or in the winter, you are now allowed to have a sleeping bag. When you're nothing, you don't even get that. So we were like, you know, we gotta get out of here. Like, let's break our leg, you know? So we'll have to like leave. And this took us quite a while to kind of figure this out. But we went every day to the barn area in the back, and we had to fill up these huge troughs full of water with just 5-gallon buckets. And you'd have to walk these trails that were pretty long down to the creek and pick up a bucket and bring it back until these giant troughs were full for horses and cows and whatever the hell we were doing that day. And so you couldn't talk to each other, and all the trails were in different directions. And if you got caught talking, it was very bad. But we figured if maybe we could, you know, water at the same time, one of us could put our leg on top of a rock and the other could throw a rock on it. And we were like, we gotta like break the fuck out of it, right? Like, we can't just like barely have a break. But then, thank God, we asked, you know, what happens we had if you hurt yourself. And then they told us, well, your parents actually signed custody over to us because of legalities and being able to do medical treatment. So we decide when you leave. And if you break your leg, you'll go to the hospital, get better, and you'll start over. So there went that plan. I watched my friend, she was from Alabama, and she had severe altitude sickness. She was throwing up every day. She couldn't get off impact. She was so sick. They would not leave her alone, even though she said she was a virgin. They screamed at her, interrogated her, and wanted her to admit that she was pregnant. She's like, I have never had sex before. I'm sick. I don't know what's happening. I'm scared. Too bad you just get fucking Cheerios. And you're going to get yelled at for it. So then after you do a bunch of crazy things and your goals are done in that level, you test out, you get to go to the upper barn, which does have electricity. And then you're level 3 and 4. So there's more kids there. And you're assigned chores every day, teams, you go out and do things. And just like it continues from there. So a couple things. Sorry, it's crazy. It's like there's so many things to say. So not everybody was created equal, that's for sure. At first I was like, okay, I'm gonna figure out how to do this. I'm gonna give them what they want, and I'm gonna get the fuck out of here as fast as possible. Well, you realize after a while that it's not the case, and that not only is their favorites being played, but it depends on how your parents are listening to them. If they say that you have a hard out, you're gonna get out. You don't necessarily have to test out and do all these things. They'll kind of push it along. But if they know they got your parents on the hook, and they're like, oh, we think she needs more time, this and that, then you will not progress. And that became obvious to me after a couple months, which again was terrifying. So I'll just share a couple of stories. I witnessed a kid that had problems, he would cuss. The staff member proudly put his head and held him underwater in the creek several times until he was fucking done. And so obviously you're like, okay, cool. This is like just no holds barred, whatever, anything can happen at any time. After getting to the ranch, much like in my life, my greatest abuser there was kind of like also the confidant, and he would, so it was confusing, you know. I have always had the attitude, so what they're putting you through, writing these things, constantly having somebody in your privacy, manipulating time and day, doing all of these things are tactics to break your mind down systematically. Okay, so your mind is in anguish, and not only have you been kidnapped and taken somewhere in the middle of nowhere, it's very hard to grasp. So that being said, I'd rather be physically hurt any day. And honestly, that was the relief, right? To get hit and things like that. The staff member, he was always telling me things. I always had to do push-ups. He was always messing with me. I'm Italian. They were calling me WAP and Goomba and making fun of me all the time. And that went for any race, anything, whatever you were, like, that was going to be focused in on. So he would repeatedly sock me in the arm all the time, and every time I hit him back, because I knew he'd hit me back harder. And if he was in, but I also was like, you know, I'm never going to back down. I mean, if you kill me on accident, by accident, then at least I'm out of here, right? And I'm not going to stand for this. And a lot of times that took focus off people who were weaker, and weren't able to, you know, stand up to their constant harassment. My arms were black and blue the entire time I was there. One time he picked me up, threw me through the tables in the lunch hall in front of everybody. One time I accidentally washed his coffee cup doing dishes. Apparently you don't wash cowboys' coffee cups. He proceeded to hit me, throw me on the ground, throw me up against the wall, scream at me in front of everybody, and then put me on laps or something horrible. You have to realize these things, it's as if it all happened in a separate time and space. Going into it, it almost doesn't even seem like I was there. But then once I do, I can't leave. This is a phenomenon I've studied and done my best to get out of, but that's why staying coherent, conscious with you, and not remembering certain details is tricky. I will also say that one of the times I was kind of like, okay, let me figure this Utah thing out. Anything I'm talking about was verified by my friends there, right? The other kids there. Because memory is crazy, and it can be rewritten, it can be manipulated, and it can be completely erased. So I can only talk about the things that I know were corroborated by other people that I specifically wrote down. I did this when I was about 19. As you can see, my face, I'm really careful and about taking pictures and even videos. Usually I'd be like more like this. You can see this half of my face doesn't move like the other half. This isn't Bell's palsy. It's actually improved. Instead of sagging, it just doesn't move, right? Like as much. If I try, I can kind of get it, but now that I pointed it out, you'll be able to see. So one time we were out bucking hay, which we were not supposed to be doing because it was over 110 degrees outside. They just said if anybody from outside comes, just say we were inside all day. They did this the whole summer I was there, because after a certain temperature, we were not supposed to be working that hard. Many kids were throwing up, puking from heat stroke. Nobody got to rest. There was no excuse. You couldn't sleep. You couldn't do anything. Just up and at 'em right the next day. So anyways, we were bucking hay, and we came back to the tack shed. Now, we had loaded this truck with hay. and I was standing on top of the bales. So the truck already, just the bed of it was about up to here on me. And then on top of that, there's several layers of hay bales. So we're on top of it and we're throwing off these bales into the tack shed to be unloaded there. Well, the staff member who is still there today now runs the horse program. He's messing around and he pushes me, like kidding. I lost my balance. I'm on top of all this weird stuff. I just instinctively grabbed out for whatever was in front of me. Well, I grabbed his shirt and I tore about a dime size little hole on the top of his where his pocket met. He looked down and he said, "You ripped my shirt." And then he picked me up, one hand in between my legs, one hand on my shoulder, and he threw me off of the truck onto my head. I mean, it had to be from at least 10, 12 feet up. I lost consciousness. I came to, I don't know how much later, they were done unloading the hay. Nobody was there. He just left me there. I guess maybe hoping I would wake up, and if I didn't, who knows. After that, my face has never regained, it's never regained its, like you can see, the size. It's just not animated. It was numb for many years, and then all down my hands were numb, and a piece of one of my legs was numb. Until, God, maybe about 5, 6 years ago. So yeah, when I was doing that little hot shower, you know, looking at myself, thinking about the kids going through this at this time, looking at my face, it's time to say something. I'm not the only one that was abused. Kids were not treated equally. And it's crazy, on the message board, which I'm only on to hopefully see if parents are asking, to say, no, do not send your kids here. These are some of the things that I witnessed. These are the things that happened to me. Often kids will speak up and then they're excluded from the group, and or kids, other graduates will come and attack those people and say, you know, this wasn't my experience and it saved my life and da 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 da. And this is not to take away from anybody's good experience, but I will also mention that if they were breaking us down and reprogramming us on purpose, and also in trauma, severe times of trauma, it's natural for the brain for you to say, I needed this, or however it is for you to cope with it. And again, I'm not saying that's in every case, but the fact usually met with so much anger and so much, you know, hate towards people speaking their truth and their experience shows you that there is actually a trauma barrier there. Because if they were to admit that they were abused, this would all, you know, it would shatter what they built in their mind just to get through it. And again, it's not a criticism, it's not a critique. I will say, I saw a post recently, and she wrote perfectly, saying, you know, I had went through this, and it wasn't until years later I realized that this was actually abuse. A lot of the things that I thought were helping as an adult, I understand now, are horrible, right? And I couldn't agree more. You know, I already came into it with a distrust and a fear of people that were supposed to take care of me. So being wary and being the way I was like, this isn't right. This is not going to, you know, I could see through it, I guess. But that's not to say they're systematically pushing buttons. And if buttons are pushed in your brain enough, they will break you down, and it's just a matter of time. So leaving, honestly, just like there's no deprogramming, okay? So you go and you're the little robot and you're trying to live your life, and then these experiences, as your mind tries to heal, it's a nightmare. I mean, it's a nightmare. It's hard to I was later diagnosed with severe PTSD. I've jumped out of car, like things would, and ironically it was after, I got out, I had night terrors that I actually had no memory of. I would scream every night, and if you tried to come in my room or wake me up, I would, hit you, get up against the wall, something crazy would happen. Well, I came into it a very hyper person. I was very high strung. I was dealing with mental illness and alcohol abuse in my home. So it was always just a matter of like, when is the other shoe gonna drop? What's gonna happen today? And so already on edge, they thought it was hilarious. They're like, you're so fun to fuck with because you're so, you react so much. So their favorite thing to do is scare me. So they'd pop out of places wearing masks, like you're doing your laps or whatever. They'd sneak in, tell other kids to come watch, jump out in front of a bush. And every time I would get so scared, I would lose my feet and fall straight on my tailbone. And they thought it was so funny. They're like, every time you lose your feet, every time, you're the best. Like, we love scaring you. So now you're already on edge. You're freaking the fuck out. And somebody's fucking with you constantly on top of it. Okay? At the end of it, I was literally auditorily hallucinating because of just what's going on in your mind. And in your counseling sessions, all you're doing, you're asked to say, like, it could never be a truth of the situation. If they asked you something they knew about your life, they would go and say, why did you let that happen? How is this bad for you? I've seen kids made to stand up and talk about their abortions and then to say how horrible of a mistake that was, that they let that happen. I had a good, awesome kid there. He was gay. And that's another thing. Nothing is secret, right? Your counseling sessions are supposed to be secret. Well, they told all the staff everything. All the staff is running around untrained. And a lot of these things, I don't even think that they were necessarily realizing what they were doing, right? Obviously, you had a crazy egomaniac running this like a prison experiment. But they love to fuck with us. Okay, it was like their favorite thing. They'd have elaborate pranks. There would be, like, one time they had this thing where they were all talking to each other on the radio about, because we couldn't listen to the actual radio, right? There's complete, disconnect from the outside world. So they're clicking back and forth on the radio as we're out doing things, the staff, and they're pretending that there's a report of a mental patient that got out. And, and it was just like this weird thing. And of course, you're not allowed to ask them what they're talking about, but they would make sure we heard it. They kept it up for like 2 days, day and a half. Like, it was crazy. And then finally, like, one night we're eating dinner and, they have a loud conversation in the kitchen about how this guy escaped and he's out and he might be in the area. And then all of a sudden this person comes, slams up against the window wearing like a white jumpsuit thing, and then comes inside and has like a knife. Everybody ran screaming, obviously. Some went into bunks, some went outside. The ones that got outside got in trouble because you're not supposed to go outside unless you are specifically told or asked. Even though you're scared for your fucking life that there's somebody there with a knife that's gonna come and kill you now because they're crazy. I mean, and they're dying laughing. They did this with chainsaws. It was like on top of everything, right? They're playing pranks. I got to go to the house later with Connie. I think they disbanded that after I left, but after a certain while, if you were there, you didn't know if you were going to go or whatever, you could stay at this house and you would wake up early and you would go cook breakfast and you had all these things. Well, a staff member, a guy, went under my bed, and when I got down in the morning, you only have 30 seconds to get ready. If you fuck that up, you're screwed. You're not a person. You got to go in limbo, which is like, you can't look at anybody. It's the same as Impact, but it's at the barn. And then you can really fuck up and get back to Impact at any time in the other place. So he grabs my foot. I'm literally like died of fear, like fainting, like dying. So on my solo that you have to do on this fucking cabin and write all these, whatever, I don't even know, all these articles, all these things about how you're, you know, this horrible person, whatever you did to everybody ever, like, sorry for existing. I was hearing things because their favorite thing to do is play pranks and stuff, and they would laugh about it and talk about it, so you're kind of like wondering, like, oh, what are they going to do to me? And I was like, you know, I heard you guys. And they're like, we didn't go up there, and they actually didn't. They got called to town, and I literally heard them talking. Like, this is how, like, much it was just constantly fucking with you. I had chemical burns from here to here at all times after getting to level 3 because I was doing the dishes. You had to bleach everything always. It was in your water. You had to dip everything in bleach. And so you couldn't not wear gloves, but it would get stuck in between the gloves. You couldn't take them off once you started. So it would just sit in there. And I had bubbles, bruises, discoloration, painful. And then you're going to work outside. And so your skin is always cracked and bleeding, and it sucks. Other forms of punishment was grave digs. They take you out into somewhere, middle of nowhere, and make you dig a 6x6x4 hole. Desert walks. If you did something that was past, you know, just having to do a bunch of push-ups or walk around the field, you would just have to walk in front of a truck for at least like 20 miles, not exaggerating. They just throw water at you every once in a while. I had to do one of those. And, oh man, it's so weird to even, it's so real. It doesn't seem real, but it's so real. Now, this is also fucked because parents are thinking that they're sending their kids somewhere for help. You know, there is no beautiful reconciliation with self. There's no tools that they give you. It's breaking you down systematically, punishing you for existing. Okay? And I do believe that parents, if they knew, they wouldn't send their kids there. Because it doesn't sound believable. And that's the beauty of it, right? It just does not sound believable. I could not get anybody to believe me in time for the statute of limitations that went up for my abuse. I was diagnosed with a neck and back disability when I was 20 years old. I was like, no, there's got to be another way, right? Like, I've been on this healing journey ever since to try to figure it out because of being thrown off that truck onto my fucking head. I was thrown upside down into a cow feeder before, where they put the hay into it. I was, said something. The thing about me, like I said, compliance. I've never really been great at that, right? At first, I was like, kill me, and it's not that I was a problem, but if he called somebody a faggot, or if I was told something that just wasn't fucking true, I wasn't going to say, yes, sir. It wasn't like I was actively not listening to chores. I have this ability to kind of just be like the teacher's favorite and also most hated student, right? And I kind of was the same at the ranch after I realized, I'm screwed because it's just basically until my parents, ran out of money. My dad didn't want me there. It was this whole other thing. So, yeah, another time I was out roping, that's another thing. So this is a working cattle ranch. They sell their cattle, they sell their hay, okay? Meanwhile, parents are paying hundreds of thousands of dollars collectively, right? So at one time, they've got all this money. They're paying for their kids to be there. We work the entire ranch for free, and then they're actually profiting off of it. I mean, how is that even legal? And let me tell you, it's not in any other place than Utah. So we were roping one time, and Myron, the horse person, said something. I think he threw a little pebble at me, or threw something at me, and was called me one of their shitty names that they always called me. And it hit me, and I was just like, to play back, I had an apple, and I threw my apple at him, right? And I like literally was like trying not to hit him, but I just like threw it, whatever. Well, it did hit him, and people laughed, so that was not okay. He started picking up the biggest rocks around him and throwing them at me as hard as he could. I was hit a couple times on my body. He then shoved me in the horse trailer with all these fucking cows, okay? Took me out finally until we were ready to go. We get down below, we were going to preg check cows, which means you check if they're pregnant, okay? So we're at this other place, and he's doing this, which I don't know if you know. You put a glove on that goes from your hand all the way to your arm, and you literally are reaching inside of cows to see if they're pregnant. Well, so he's doing this, and we're just like doing whatever we're doing. When he's done, he comes over to me, and it's all muddy and gross and cow shit and water because all the cows are like funneled into this spot, right? So he's like, don't ever fucking do that again. Takes off the glove, wraps it around my neck, puts it in my mouth, and then pushes me face down into the fucking mud. It wasn't my shower day either. That was a bitch. There's just so many things. I could literally go on for hours. I watched when he found out, and some of the other staff as well found out this kid was gay. He, in front of everybody in the whole barn thing, was like, that faggot can't come on my team. I don't know how he's going to get these credits, blah, 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 because you have to do, like, different things. And I mean, literally screaming it, belittling him, it's like, but he had told this to his counselor in a private session. Nothing was private. I was constantly told I was a slut, all kinds of things because what they thought they knew about me. I used to talk a lot with my hands. My dad does that. My grandpa does that. Everything I did and said, I would illustrate with my hands. Well, they said that was akin to gang signs, even though I grew up in the middle of fucking nowhere. So they tied my hands behind my back. And anytime I wasn't doing a chore or whatever, I had to literally have my hands tied behind my back. And only until after everybody had sat down and I was the last one that could be eating, somebody would untie it, I was allowed to eat, and then I would do whatever chore I had to do, and then they would be tied back again. Any free time. They did it for like a day and a half, and then I messed up and I went and I said, hey, and of course I couldn't do any of my punishments. I couldn't do any of my goals because your free time is when you're supposed to write your goals about how horrible you are. So I was, behind. And of course you're like, oh, I'm going to get my shoes taken away and not be a person anymore if I don't catch up. So it was, it was a big deal. And so, so the next day I go up after I get the stupid things off and I go, hey, Maya, can I go out back and run like 3 laps? And I like literally use my hands for every word because that's just like what I did and who I was. He counted all the words I said and he was like, yeah, and add, 12, which every one was a half mile. So that was another 6 miles. And then I came back in and my hands were tied behind my back for an entire week. And I don't talk with my hands anymore. So I'm trying to see, like I said, there's so many things I could keep going on about. I mean, forever, right? But whether this programming was successful or not in people, it's done by breaking down and installing something from the basic understanding that you do not deserve anything. You don't deserve a pillow. You don't deserve comfort. You don't deserve love. That we have to earn everything. Well, it took a long, long time. But no. You don't have to earn that. Abundance, love, that's my fucking birthright. And that is yours too. Okay? It's not true. It's simply not true. The fact that I am here and breathing means that I am love. It means that I have all the rights to be abundant and happy and cherished and looked out for and safe. That's why I stand before you as fucking queen. It's time that we claim this abuse that's happened, that's real, and stop it for the kids going through it now. Dr. Phil still feeds kids into this place. I have written so many letters, called, doesn't matter. It needs to stop. It's still happening. The Stanford Prison Experiment showed pretty clearly what happens when you put people in certain situations, not to mention in the middle of nowhere with little to no oversight. There was once a website. It was called, I believe, heal.org. If anybody of the old moderators or anything knows what happened to that, please, please, please get in touch with me. There was an amazing database of people, the different times they went, the staff that was there at that time, what had happened. There was also a lot of testimonies to counselors that went there who were not batshit crazy and just wanted to live in this crazy little small town. And I'm not being facetious or dramatic. The people that stayed were not right. They were vindictive, old, lazy, whatever it was. They're just trying to get through their day. And some of them were more dangerous than others, more actively mean than others. But on that website, there was testimonials of Wayne drinking, of staff members asking them not to treat kids certain ways. And then once they didn't, they left. And so I would love, love, love to find these testimonials again. I had saved a bunch of it on my old computer, which I only have a hard drive for now. So I'm actually going to find somebody to look at that for me and hopefully try to get some of this information and those names back. If you were a staff member that was there and quit because of abuse you saw, please come forward. It's time. This is still happening to kids. It's not right. There are so many ways to rebuild relationships, to rebuild selves. It has nothing to do with tearing things down. I have spent my life trying to undo this damage, not only from what I was already experiencing before I came, but the schism that this created in my mind. It is hell to not even know where you are. I mean, I can't even begin to tell you. I jumped out of cars, like smells, triggers, severe PTSD. It wasn't just like an overwhelming feeling. It was a literally transportation back there. Faces I was talking to would morph into staff members and I would leave. I jumped out of a car going 40 miles an hour in Orange County and I came to almost 18 hours later fishing with some people at the ocean like 63 miles away. I still have no idea how I got there. I was not on drugs. I just dissociated and left. I had the ambulance called on me twice in college because I had a severe panic attack to the point of my hands, lips, face turning blue and getting the lobster claws because of some smell, right? And until you accidentally find all those triggers, it might be the same shirt that I saw the last minute before getting knocked out. It might be the smell of somebody. It might be even the smell of campfire I used to love, and that was my favorite thing. The first time I went to one after I got back, I ran away into the woods and nobody could find me for hours. And I didn't even know I had done that because it was that instilled. It's like, this is how bad I have to leave the situation. Your brain goes, nope, we're not doing that again. But Healing is possible. And acknowledging that is key. This isn't about, hanging anybody up to dry except for those directly responsible. Parents, if they even knew a fraction of what happened there, unless they're evil, they would never have sent their kids there. They are also victims in this. They are getting swindled, taken advantage of. And taking away somebody's sense of self, autonomy, personhood, to scrape them of their essence, to perform as you wish, is not healing. It's not. It's impossible. That's not how the world works. We are love. And we can only heal through acknowledging those places in ourselves that we don't want to look at. And I hate to say it, we are our own common denominator. And if you're having problems with somebody, and it's engaging, including your kid, you're part of the problem. There's an issue there that is an opportunity to get solved. Sending somebody somewhere is not going to do that. It's just not, and this isn't about hate or judgment. It's understanding that from that deep place of pain, saying, I don't know how to fix this, please help. So please hear me when I say it's not about that. But in order to heal, we have to look at the things we don't want to see. You have to be willing to look in your own mirror. These kids, me, we already had problems. Kids don't just act out and do bad and run away or do drugs or have sex because they're feeling great. Something happened to them or is happening, or home isn't good. People don't just go AWOL. There are buttons that need to be pushed for that to happen. And it's sad because a place like that could be a beautiful reconciliation of spirit. But instead it's a fucking wasteland. And it's terrifying. And it's still happening today. Finally, it seems like there's things happening to change these laws. Because only Utah allows this kind of treatment. And Turnabout Ranch is one of over 70. 70. I don't even know the exact number right now. That is having some sort of horrible treatment plan for children. These places need to be shut down. They need to be stopped. And spreading awareness, at least if we can say, hey, parents, this is not a solution. You need to be part of the solution. If we can make enough videos, enough noise to where people stop even seeing this as an option, then, and then hopefully the legal side will happen too. But it's time. It's time. And please DM me. I'm speaking with some others. We're going to be figuring out some sort of platform, working with others already speaking. We need your stories. We need your stories out there. I cannot think of any other reason for being sent there besides shutting them down one day. And it's always been on my list of goals, house in the country, house in this, the things you want in life, and shut down Utah. And, honestly, I haven't been mentally able to. But I think it's time now. I think things have changed enough to where people are willing to listen to those that they necessarily weren't willing to listen to before. We need people from all times and places. I was there in, I believe, 2003. We need people before me and after me. We need to show the scope of this abuse. I am working on a page. If we could find the heal page so all that information is together again, that would be amazing. I cannot find it. I'm going to look. Please, staff members, graduates, and if you went there and you had a good experience, don't tear down others. This is very real, and we all cope with trauma in different ways. And that doesn't mean that it didn't happen. Sometimes it's easier to change the story in your mind. Or like I said, maybe it just doesn't fit you. But I hear a lot in the comments of people saying, well, I didn't experience that, but then again, I was good. Let me be very clear. Nobody deserves to be treated that way, regardless of what you do or do not do, or who you are, or what happened, or how much money your parents have. Being stripped away of your dignity and treated like a fucking animal, nobody deserves that. It's not a matter of being good or not. And we need to stick up for each other and those kids in there right now. Thank you for listening.